Why are young men so lonely in this day? I spent my 17th birthday, working, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't feel like it was, worth anything to celebrate with. I got home, I grabbed some food, scrolled through my phone, and told myself it was fine. But I remember, sitting in my bed around 2 a.m. just, staring at the ceiling. Another year of my life went by thinking about my mental health, right? And I realized something. I haven't had like a real conversation with anyone in weeks. Not about how I felt, not about what was going on in my life, literally just nothing. And I knew I wasn't the only one feeling like this. If you're a guy watching my age, you probably know what I mean. That hollow feeling in your chest, the voice that tells you everyone else had it figured out except for you. And that feeling of being completely alone even when you're surrounded by people. So I didn't understand it at first. I thought it was just me, but the more I talked to people, online and at school, the more I realized how common it is. Really, a lot of guys my age are feeling the exact same way I do, and it's honestly pretty scary. Because we live in a time where we're connected constantly through group chats and the snap streaks or whatever, TikTok. But somehow the more connected we are, the lonelier it feels, because I can sit in a room with classmates, talk about school and whatever it is, and still feel completely isolated. And texting someone hey isn't the same as actually being heard. DMing someone isn't the same as someone actually being there for you in real life in the moment. And yet I still like we feel act like it kind of is. When we were younger, making friends was easier because you liked the same games, watched the same shows, and you just clicked a lot easier. But as I got older, something changed. I learned that needing people doesn't make you weak, and sharing your feelings made you soft. That's not true. That asking for help meant that you were failing in life. And school didn't help with that, because I learned math, science, and history, but no one taught me how to deal with stress, right? And I know I probably say this in my other videos, but I just really think that's the truth. And no one taught me how to handle anxiety or how to talk to someone when you're, falling apart inside. So I usually just pushed through. I pretended and not to care, and usually it would get worse. And I've seen other guys act like everything was fine, and I feel like I'm not the only one struggling, because I can just tell, especially with my friends. But some of us are not okay. Maybe none of us are. I don't really know. And there's also like another thing that I hear way too much about, this like super like insane masculinity trap. Is like, last month probably I went weeks without a single meaningful conversation, not a phone call, not a late night event, not even like a real check-in. Like, I would barely even speak to people at school. I had people I texted, sure, maybe a couple times, but people I saw at school, but no one would actually say something to me really. And I convinced myself that real men figure it out alone, that needing someone is like a weakness, but it's literally not. That's just a lie. And the idea that men have to be so perfect, strong, and self-sufficient is what keeps so many of us, isolated and lonely. And it's why so many guys my age feel anxious, depressed, and completely disconnected from the world. Because I think most men in the modern world, I guess, modern dating world even too, even I sometimes think this too, like, your worth is completely measured on how much money you make or whatever. And that's definitely important, but there's way more to being a man than what your paycheck is, honestly. And school doesn't help with this either. It teaches all the basic stuff, but no one teaches how to handle the pressure and how to fail without hating yourself or thinking that you're a failure, and how to build real friendships and relationships. I spent weeks stressing over grades, or if I wanted to go to college or not. And what other people taught me is, and every time I struggled, the system looked the other way. Teachers, classmates, and even like the family, no one asked if I was okay. Everyone is just expecting something from you, to keep moving, to keep smiling, keep performing. And the thing is, that pressure isn't unique to me. A lot of guys feel the same, and even girls. We're all trying to pretend we've got it together, but might be barely holding on. And then you have the social media side of it. The thing that's supposed to connect us actually makes it worse. You scroll through people's highlights reels and you feel empty, and I see it at parties with schools and friends, you know, traveling, doing all this crazy stuff. And I have more conversations through screens rather than in real life, but you know, not even across the table really. I have followers, but mostly not friends. And you know, you can post all you want on social media, and you know, you could still feel alone. I feel like that's the thing, you know, likes and views aren't really like connected, I suppose. Comments aren't connected, you know. Real human connection doesn't really happen online. So, you know, what do we do? Honestly, I don't really have all the answers, but some of the things that I've tried that kind of feel like a solution for me, at least, is, you know, I'm still figuring these out. Vulnerability is not a weakness, because saying I'm struggling doesn't make you a burden. It gives someone else permission to open up too. Every time I've been honest, someone said, you know, me too. Or, you know, not having a lot of friends is not a bad thing. It's honestly a good thing, because you want to be quality over quantity, right? I don't need tons of friends to know. You know, I need a few people I can really talk to, people who've seen me at my worst and, you know, didn't just run away. And text and DMs aren't enough, because connections happen in person, in real life, in late night talks, in parks, you know, in your car, wherever. As long as it's real life, and in the small moments where you can't hide from it. And if you're drowning, you know, ask for help, you know, please, you know, text that friend, or call family, or find someone to talk to, because being alone, it doesn't always make you strong. It can keep you lonely. If you don't have anyone, you know, leave a comment, I'll read it. Someone else in my community, you know, can try to help you. You're not as alone as you might think you are. So, you know, I don't know where all of you guys are at in life. You know, maybe you're doing okay, maybe you're, you know, barely holding it together like I sometimes am. But if you feel alone, I promise you, you know, you're not. I've been there, and you know, I hope you know we're all in this together. And yeah, I hope that helps someone out there.